This conference will now be recorded.
Regular meeting and public hearing agenda for Wednesday, October 7, 2020. The first piece is old business, EPC 22-2020. Margaret Miner, 46 Ridge Acres Road, proposing pond dredging. The site is shown on Assessor's Map number 4 as lot number 57.
I have comments, typos from Jim Millard.
Okay, thank you, Jim, for your diligence. I'm glad you were never my English teacher.
You're welcome, Chairman.
And does anybody else have?
That was the only ones I got.
Okay. Okay, with following our prior protocol, I'll be calling on Jim and Susan. I'd like a motion to approve this draft. Jim?
I'm pleased to make a motion to approve the conditional approval draft prepared by Rich Jacobson.
And Susan?
I second.
Great. Without objection, I'll put unanimous into a unanimous vote for that. The next piece is new business, EPC 49, 2019. Fletcher Development, LLC, 14 Locust Hill Road, lot number 4. Request to amend the site plan to modify house and pool locations in the upland review area.
This was a request to shift the house to save an existing retaining wall. There's no additional work within the upland review area, but since the original project went to public hearing, I didn't want to do it administratively. But Harry Roachville, I see, is here. Questions?
Hey, Harry, can you give us like a 2-minute on this?
Sure. Would it help if I share my screen, or you just want me to go over it just sort of verbally?
Well, if you could share your screen, it'd be great.
Yeah, do I have that ability, Fred?
Just give me one moment, Harry.
Yep. Let me know when you can see it.
You should have control. There you go. We can see it.
Okay. So essentially there was two changes, and actually I'll show the old one first. So there's there was an existing retaining wall right here. Can you see my cursor moving as well?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So there was an existing retaining wall just north of the house that would they were proposing to remove portions of it, but as they got into the site clearing and got to investigate a little further, it was determined that that wouldn't be the best idea. So essentially the house moved 10 feet south, essentially parallel to where it was now, to avoid having to remove that retaining wall. It didn't encroach, and I'll go to the new one. It didn't encroach on the upland review area at all. And it was just about a 10-foot shift. And then the driveway, same thing, it shifted 10 feet with that. There wasn't any increase in impervious area for that same exact footprint. So the stormwater management system stayed exactly where it is, no changes to that at all. The other change was the pool shifted to the northwest about 20-25 feet. And that was to better fit the existing conditions of the site after trees were cleared, and there, as you know, there's a lot of ledge out there. So it was sort of found out that if they shifted it that direction, there was going to be retaining walls proposed anyway, and they could use those retaining walls as a sort of double infinity edge for the pool as a nice feature for the property. Again, there's no disturbance closer to the upland review area than was already approved last time, as far as the level spreader and the stormwater management system were the closest things. The limited disturbance remains the same as far as the silt fence and silt socks and other erosion controls. And essentially, those are the other only two changes to the site plan. Oops. Oh boy.
Section. No, I was. Oh, no, I'm sorry, I was on mute, Rich, so. Was there, or is there, or will there be any further incursion into the upland review area?
No, no.
Okay. So it's, so
It's a
that's,
motion to approve if you agree with it. It's-
yeah, I'd like to go through. Jim, anything?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Susan?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Gunnar?
No, it looks pretty straightforward to me. I don't have any concerns from what I've heard and seen.
Michael? Michael? Michael Urban? Michael, I don't know, I see your mic is on, but I can't hear you, so we'll come back to you. Kelly?
Nothing from me.
Is Bill right?
Nothing.
Okay. So, great. Let's, since there's really no more incursion into the, Rich, can you write this up? Then I don't think.
It's just a simple motion.
Or should I just
Yeah.
go? Hey, Jim, can I have a motion to approve these changes as proposed by Harry Rutherford?
Yes, I'm pleased to make that motion to approve these revisions to the plans for 14 Locust Hill Road.
Thank you. Lot number 4. Susan?
I second the motion.
Great. I'll assume that's unanimous. To avoid doing a roll call here, to approve that. Okay, Rich? Okay, now we're going to move to public hearing, EPC 2020. Megan Thornton and Eric Romer, 49 Birch Road, proposing pool house, and patio construction in the upland review area. The site is shown on assessor's map number 11 as lot number 11. The hearing was opened on September 2 and immediately continued. Okay, is there a person representing the applicant?
Yes, Jan Goshinsky, Enviro Protex. With me, I have Dr. Vista, who's our civil engineer, and Alex Mock, who is our environmental scientist. And I also have the owners watching here too. So I'm going to take you through just quickly of what we're planning to do. And then I'll have any questions that you might have, and we'll be glad to answer them. So the basic idea is to put a swimming pool there in the backyard. Their yard is divided by a stream, a pond. Is also on a large pond is also on their property. So the construction, the pool itself sits within the required setback lines. We're okay with the coverage. We're okay with the setbacks. So any of the proposed activities, there's nothing that we have to do with it, with the planning and zoning. There's no really regrading here, and we'll take you, Doug is going to take you through the civil engineering plan. So the basic idea is that because we are going to dig and we're going to bring in concrete, to pour the shotcrete pool, we need to create an access, and we'll have to cross the wetlands or the stream that's up there on the north side of their property. So there's going to be a temporary bridge that's going to be installed there, and that is going to be removed after we complete the heavy construction. And by that, I mean the swimming pool itself and the pool house, because those are the parts that require the most construction and heavy equipment being brought in. We also are planning to bring in, because of obviously the pool needs power and needs water, and because of the pool house, we'll have to bring in a sewer line there through under that bridge, or sort of as part of that construction, and that's going to be done again now as part of that heavy construction. Okay, and so that's, of course, we're going to install water detention there. Again, Doug is going to take you through that. And we're going to also do mitigation. Alex will talk about that in terms of landscaping and additional plantings to be replaced. We are going to take one large a tree that's 30 inches. It's hollow inside. It's a tulip tree. They tend to, when they grow that big, that size, they tend to be hollow inside. I know from my own experience, we had a tree that really broke during one of the storms, and it was about that same size. So anyway, I'd like to now just have Doug and Alex take you through. Oh, actually, before I do that, just let me just address, I know there's some zoning issues here, and our own, the clients here, they have been, basically taken for a ride by a contractor that promised them that everything has been taken care of in terms of permitting, and they proceeded to do some construction. Later, it turns out that the appropriate permits were not pulled. We're sorry about this. This happened without anybody's really knowledge. We didn't know this was going on. There was a fireplace that was built next on the to the existing patio there on the side of the house behind the garage. And that fireplace, as later building department inspector came out and looked at that and said, well, that has not been inspected. It's too close to the structure. You would have to remove it. And the owners actually did that. You just removed it. It has been totally removed. It's not there. There's also a playscape that was installed close to the property line. I think most people have no idea that something like a playscape would actually have to obey the setback line of the main house. So that is going to be moved out of the way. There is a shed there that has been there for a long time. And it's going to be removed because during construction it has to go. For now, we'll just keep it because people just like to keep some stuff there, and use it as a storage. Once we complete all of it, that will be also removed. And any other zoning or building code violations that we might have still extending, we don't know. I was told after talking to the building department and zoning that those are the issues. And so if there's anything else, well, obviously we'll address that too. Okay. All right. So could you take us through your design?
Sure.
About that?
Sure. For the record, Doug DeVesta, representing the applicant. Jacek pretty much went over what we're proposing out there. I'll just go a little more detail. In terms of regulated areas, the wetlands were flagged by Tom Petrus in 2015, which is basically right along where my cursor is in that light green area and the pond itself. And pretty much the edge of the pond on the east side is the existing boulders that are there right now. So again, that's the wetlands area we're dealing with. Again, we're looking to construct a pool in the western portion of the site. To get there, we would have to cross the Tokenique Brook. What we're proposing to do would be a temporary crossing, which we have details. This is a temporary crossing details doing twin 18-inch pipes with stone around it and a minimum of 2 feet of cover over the pipes, and then a steel plate on top of that to allow the heavier equipment to go across it. So that's a section of it. This is the a profile. This is a profile looking along the longitudinals north to south on the brook itself. Sandbags on the side to hold the rocks in place there. I think Joe made a comment adding a geotex fabric along the inside of here to keep the stone in place in case it does flood out on us. So that's a proposal that we certainly can do as a condition of approval and revise this detail for that matter there. So again, the pool itself in the back western corner of the site there, minor regrading to get the pool level using a boulder retaining wall here, about 1.5 feet about 1 to 1.5 feet high to keep the grading from going out and closer to the wetlands. In terms of drainage, we are looking to put channel drains on each side of the pool patio area and around the pool house that will all go into a Coltex system. before it goes into it goes to a junction box with open bottom that will allow any sediment to settle out in that for cleaning purposes. And this will also handle the 2, 10, 25, and 50-year design storms, and also handle the water quality volume for the impervious surfaces from the patio, the pool decking, and the pool house itself. In terms of erosion control, we're showing double row hay staked silt fence with hay bales right along the wetlands line. Also, we're providing silt fence on each side of the brook itself with a anti-trapping pad leading onto the existing driveway. And then during the weekends and storm events, and we put hay bales across the entrance to the construction on both sides to mitigate any potential erosion towards the brook itself. And as Jacek mentioned early on, we've got all the utilities going out there. We'll have water supply to the pool house, a grinder pump to take the effluent and bring it over and tie that into the existing sanitary lateral going into the sewer main in Birch Road. And also the water service will be brought in underneath the crossing and tie that back into the pool house itself. So as we mentioned, we designed the drainage for the site to handle the 2, 10, 25, 50-year design storm, and that has been accomplished. The commission had asked Joe Candace to do a peer review on this. I'd like to go through that a little quickly. I believe you all have seen my comments, or Joe's comments, and my responses, but I'd like to just quickly go through them. And I'll go through the changes that were made to the plans itself. Just some general comments that Joe had about the future pool house. I think maybe Jacek or the owners can talk a little more about what their proposal for the pool house, if they're going to construct it now or that's going to happen in the future. But that's something we can discuss a little in a bit. We put the datum on the plan that Joe asked for. We showed the limits of disturbance going through the main portion of the drain through the access way going into the construction area. Relocating the pool, the playscape, as Jacek mentioned, we're showing a potential location here for the playscape, pulling it outside the building setback line. We've also included the connection of the sewer line, as we just discussed, of the sewer line and the water line to the main and to the service line, the existing sewer line and existing water service line going into the house now. Stormwater, we looked at the pre and the post numbers in terms of the total areas being part of the drainage areas, and there was I made a mistake in that, and we modified that and corrected that. By doing that, that also helped. That also showed that we have a 0 increase in runoff. We did show a watershed map that Joe had asked for, and then again, getting back to the next question was, regarding 50-year design storm, we were just a little bit under the, little over post development, was a little over the pre-development, but with the adjustment of the drainage areas, it showed that we have 0 increase in runoff. The test hole logs, we had the incorrect number down on the test hole number, so that was adjusted. We provided the water quality volume calculations and also demonstrated that we are providing the water quality, handling the water quality volume by keeping the outfall, the outlet pipe above the water quality volume. So we have anything below the invert of the pipe is the water quality volume. Then Joe had asked us about the crossing and design it according to the CONDOT drainage manual for temporary hydraulic facilities, which we did, and that's again, that goes back to our details here, and those details follow that requirements. And we also looked at the design of the flow. Again, these are twin 18-inch corrugated plastic pipes, and we looked at the flows going through there based on the design manuals for our 2-year design storm. And The 2-year design storm flow is, one second, what my numbers are. 2-year design storm is 2.9 CFS. And these twin pipes, one pipe can handle 12.5. You put twins in there, you can handle 25 cubic feet per second. So we've got plenty of capacity to pass the 2-year storm. Also looked at the 10, 25, and 50-year design storm, and each of those storms can pass through the twin 18-inch pipes there. So we feel that our temporary, again, it's only temporary, it's only there during construction. Once the construction is over, that will be removed and the area will be restored back to its natural, to its existing conditions there. Joe also had asked us to provide a location where right now there's a wooden bridge to bring in lawnmowers and things like that to access the back of the backyard for cutting the grass. And then we showed a temporary storage area for the wooden bridge during construction, and that bridge will be brought back to cross the bridge, to cross the brook itself. So that pretty much addresses Joe's comments. The other comment Joe had was to take the silt fence and the hay bales and bring it up to the edge of the wetlands line, and that's why this line, the hay bales and silt fence, are right along the wetlands line itself. So that was also moved. I'd like to quickly go through some of the other changes that were made to the site plan, just for your reference. Again, we've added the additional details for the temporary crossing on the plan. Again, we just talked about adding this hay bales at the entrance of the construction site on the east side and the west side of the brook. Also moved the hay bales and the silt fence up to the edge of the wetlands line. We included the utilities, electric and water service to the pool house, and also connected that to the existing utility services. We removed the retaining wall we originally had on the plan, and then provided a boulder wall down a lower wall, and just slope down to the top of the wall on the side, on the south and east side of the pool itself. We added an additional tree protection around this 20-inch maple. We also added a second stockpile area. We had one on the east side. Now we added one more on the west side, just to do the amount of material that would be stockpiled there just temporarily while during construction, mostly topsoil to replace back when it's being disturbed. We added the second row of the detention system to provide, again, to help provide the water quality volume as we just talked about. So that really pretty much addresses Joe's comments, goes through the changes that were made in the plans. And I think maybe we'll have Alex give us a little presentation regarding the environmental assessment of the property and the proposal that we're proposing here. Alex?
Good evening, this is Alexandra Mock. I'm a wetlands and soil scientist, also a landscape designer, and I would like to discuss wetlands a little bit. So this is a wetland water course corridor associated with Tockenig Brook. This area is highly manipulated by past human activity. So the brook, the section of the channel had been excavated and turned into a pond, and the pond took some of the original wetland area, and the pond is being shallower and shallower, accumulates some sediment because of the dam or a concrete structure at the end. This is the southern end of the pond, which detains the water and has two spillways. And because of the structure, the water cannot freely move through this area. Therefore, the sediment, which is naturally being carried by the stream, is being accumulated within this pond area. The shallow water is not good for aquatic environment because the water tends to heat up during the summertime, and also loses the oxygen because of the higher temperatures. There's an aerator which is installed into the pond, which helps a little bit with in terms of oxygen content, but still the temperature of the water is not being addressed. The edges of the pond and also the brook are being improved with ornamental plantings. This type of planting doesn't provide a food source for wildlife, therefore it's not very attractive. It may provide some shelter because of the structure those plants are creating. The pond is enclosed by a safety fence. Also, the section of the brook is enclosed by safety fence. Therefore, any larger wildlife is not able to access the area. And the wetland is being maintained as a lawn with a few trees growing within, which are shading the soils and anchoring also the soil and provide a little bit better structure. The only functions and the values of those wetlands and watercourses together, the whole corridor, it's basically the groundwater discharge, and the pond captures sediment, which is not a good thing for the environment, and captures some nutrients and also some organic material, which is being built by the flowing water into the area. The proposed activities are going to have a short and long-term impacts, potential ones. So the idea behind it is to recognize those impacts and provide mitigation. So at the end of the day, we're going to have a net benefit for the wetland. So the short-term potential impacts are going to be associated with the crossing, and the details for the crossing was described before, so I'm not repeat it. But the crossing with the pipe installed during the crossing and the stick bags and also the riprap will prevent any silty water getting into the stream and to the pond if done properly. Also, the water diversion during the utility installation is going to ensure that the water will flow clear, and it shouldn't be any sedimentation noticed within the pond and lower section of the water course. The long-term impacts are going to be associated with the loss of trees. We're going to lose 5 trees. One of them is pretty large. And also the introduction of impervious surface. The way those impacts are going to be mitigated is by the proposed wetland restoration plan. And we're offering 26 native shrubs, which are going to be replacing the existing lawn, and this is the net benefit. So instead of having the lawn, which is there today, we're going to have 26 native shrubs, which are going to not only financially support the wildlife in terms of providing food, but also nesting and hiding sites and resting sites for them. The wetland crossing or watercourse crossing is going to be stabilized with 108 herbaceous plants, and they're going to restore the edges. They're going to provide way deeper root system. Right now, there's a hosta which is planted there. It's not really a good plant to stabilize the edges, and obviously it's an ornamental species. So the new ones which are going to be planted there are going to be much better for the anchoring the banks and also for restoring the area for wildlife and providing additional benefits. The impervious surface, which is going to be introduced to the area, is going to be mitigated by the proposed in-ground infiltration system. So, and also the stone or the boulder wall along the graded area is going to provide the permanent demarcation to the wetland. And behind this wall, you're going to have some planting. So this area will receive again, net improvements. And I'm here if you have any questions.
Are there any questions from the commission?
Yes, Eric, Mr. Chairman, I have a question of of Alexandria, if you wouldn't mind. I believe I heard you say, please correct me if I'm wrong, that the pond is kind of man-made, and maybe prior to this owner, or maybe during this current owner's residence here, that there's stone spillways, two of which show on the south end on the plan I have here, were added but don't function to the best design. Am I saying that correctly?
No, it's not that they don't function. I think they were designed properly in that they have a purpose, and the purpose is to detain the water in the pond, so the pond is not going to go dry during the summertime. Obviously the flow is being regulated there, but it's not an open channel as it used to be. So the sediment cannot really migrate freely through the area because the spillway is lifted up a little bit. So the sediment keeps accumulating at this spillway area.
Thank you. Which is, I think, pretty much what I heard you say. So my question is a little bit of a cart and a horse kind of question. Are we looking at an application that is looking to make these terrific improvements for the family, the pool and everything you've described, but should we also be dealing first with a correction, whether it be a dredging or a restoration of the original pond water flows to the south, so that in itself acts as a enhanced wetland, let's call it?
I'm not sure what would you include in this enhancement, because the concrete platform with the spillways is acting as a dam, so that's why the pond is there. If you're going to remove the structure, probably you will have to restore the entire stream and the flow, and also restore the area where the pond used to be. I'm not sure whether or not this will be a significant modification, and I'm not sure how the downstream area will react to it, because maybe the downstream has adjusted over time to the less flow because of the spillways, or the way the spillways provide the flow. When you open this up, the downstream may not be ready for it, and it may cause unnecessary erosion.
Okay.
And impact to the neighboring property. So I think this is a huge undertaking, and it should be studied before considered.
Yeah, if I could, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to jump in here because we actually had a dredger look at this pond and determined that that was not a viable option. He just said that this is not a pond that could be easily dredged. You have to use a vacuum structure, and once you disturb all that soil, I mean the sediment, that's just going to go all down stream, and it's going to create more problems for everybody there. I mean, you could probably think of some kind of a comprehensive plan where you take care of this brook all the way up and down Darien. But I think, to request that my clients actually clean this pond, which is on their property, of course, but that's kind of, I think, unreasonable. But, again, we're open for suggestions. We thought about this. We had a professional go in there, and he said, I'm not going to touch this pond. No way. That's basically what we got from him. Doesn't matter what the cost is. He says, I just want to, he basically said, look, it's going to be like sticking a stick into a ant's nest. So it's better not to touch this. Water will regulate itself. The pond goes up and down in seasons. And as Alex was saying, if these spillways were not installed there, probably 50, 75 years ago, who knows, that pond would just dry in the summer. I mean, we had a drought. I mean, that would have been all dry pretty much.
Is it dry today?
No, there is some water there standing at the bottom. It's not, it goes up and down. But you see, again, when we consider this application, what we really didn't want to do is touch this pond or the brook in any way. This is why we're going to the expense of going over it, with a bridge and staying away from it as far as possible, and really not to do anything to it, because it is a man-made structure, structure to a certain extent. And I will show you a little bit later some aerial photos view of the whole area, and you will see there are lots of ponds, little, tiny, bigger, smaller, and they're all being fed with these little brooks. And yes, they get overwhelmed from time to time when we get 2 or 3 inches in 24 hours. I mean, that's just, we never had rains like that. I mean, I lived in this area for 35 years, and I don't remember stuff like that, where there's no rain during the summer, and then all of a sudden we get 2 inches in 24 hours. So anyway, but that's a different subject. But I think, again, our approach was not to touch this. We looked into it, and we were advised not to do it. Dredging, that is.
I just asked, is the pond dry right now? Because it's been dry everywhere. I live not far from where this home is, here on Birch Road. And during that heavy flash rain of 2 inches that you described, does this pond overflow? And is it a large flooded backyard?
No, because there were stone walls which were, again, installed a long time ago. And the slope, I mean, the site actually slopes all the way up to the western corner, west-north corner. And so it's quite a bit of a change in grade. And so the house never flooded. There's flooding in the road that you can sometimes see as you drive up and down Birch Road. I mean, I'm on that road very often. I see sometimes some pounding on the road, but not in the backyard, because again, this all goes downstream, and in quick, the pond will fill up itself to the brim, and then it will just recede very quickly, because all that water is just, going down very, very fast.
Jim, to answer your question, I was out there today, and there is water in the pond today.
Thank you, Doug.
Yeah, not as much as you would have after a heavy rain, but there is. Yeah, and again, I think, as Alex was saying, if we remove those spillways and that wall over there, I think that would probably dry out, because water would just get down into the Long Island zone.
Sounds like.
And also, from environmental perspective, there's nothing wrong when the pond turns into a shallow pond and then eventually a wetland. It is a different type of habitat, but sometimes the wetlands may have better value and functions in terms of stormwater capturing and purification than pond itself. The siltation at the end may not be a bad thing for the environment.
Okay. I know the grade change you describe. I probably drive Birch Road half a dozen times every day, because, as I said, I live nearby. And it looks like that spillway system that was built 50 or whatever number of years ago was well designed and continues to function. That's all I have.
I think it works. Yes, I agree.
Jacek, do you have anything else?
I know, I think Bob Maslin wants to make a presentation. I just received an email, right before the hearing, and thank you for.
Jacek,
yeah.
I know, I'm the chairman. Thank you. I'll recognize people to speak when it's appropriate. The first person to speak will be Joe Connis.
I have one question first, Eric.
Okay, please go ahead.
So I just had a question on the utilities now being installed now that we see the sewer main and the water. How is that going to disturb? Because I understand the access point and the temporary bridge, but the sewer lines are not temporary. And so what steps are being taken during the installation to preclude sediment and unnecessary disturbance in the wetland? I understood Alexander's point on the plantings afterwards, fortifying the bank, but I'm just curious what the impact is on installation.
Is this the question for me? Probably Doug will be better to explain, but so there will be two types of addressing issues. When the utilities are going to be dug into the channel, what's going to happen, there's going to be a sump pump, which is going to be taking the water from the northern end of the bridge or crossing. And then it's going to be, the water is going to be sucked out clean, and then the pipe is going to take the water, or a pipe is going to take the water to the other side of the crossing, and the water is going to be discharged there. So the water is not going to be flowing through the disturbed area, it's going to go around it. So this way we can maintain the good quality of water and when we're doing this whole disturbance.
Right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else from the commission? Okay, Joe?
Wait, whoa. I have some questions, Eric.
Okay, please, Gunnar.
So where the proposed, where the bridge is, and you're going to be going across that bridge, does that typically in a big storm, does that totally overflow, or is it adequate enough to handle the water flow? Is it even in a storm condition?
It was designed based on the Condot's hydraulic temporary crossings. It was designed for a 2-year storm, but we also checked it for the 10, 25, and 50-year design storms, and twin pipes in there has the capacity to handle up to a 50-year design storm and beyond.
Okay. I don't know if we're at this point, but I have a question. Have you ever considered where the moving, instead of putting the future pool house where it is, actually relocating that up to the 16 by 16 stone patio just to on the west side of the proposed pool? The reason being to get that further away from the wetlands.
That we can't do because that would be within the building setback lines. So the pool and the pool house has to be within the building setback lines, and that would be outside the building setback lines.
Okay. I know we've already talked about, you talked about the pond, but has it ever been dredged? Is there any history that it either has been dredged at any point in time in recent history?
I worked on this project back in 2013. At that point, the pond had not been dredged either. So for the last 7 years that I've known, that has not been dredged. The owners are on this call as well. I'm not sure how long they've lived there, but they may be able to, give us an idea if it's been dredged since they've been there. I don't believe it has been, but we can ask them.
Yeah, that's affirmative. It has not been dredged since we've been living here for the entire duration of our stay. Prior to that, we have no knowledge in the affirmative or negative.
So if I heard Jacek correctly, either he or someone rendered the opinion that leave this thing alone, don't touch it, don't dredge it, don't mess with it. Is that the engineer's opinion?
Yeah, well, that was actually a guy, a dredger, a professional dredger. That's all he does for a living. And he looked at the site and he looked at the pond and he said that does not really require any dredging at this point. Because I think the whole idea here is that the water just basically flows through. This is not a retention pond that we need to have a certain capacity for, I don't know, 25-year storm or something like that. The water basically goes through it. And so the better the bottom, the slicker it is, it just comes in and comes out. And it never really flooded in any certain way. This is not navigational water. We don't have to have boats go through there. So there's really no need to dredge it unless we wanted to, again, as a comprehensive plan. But, and I can show you a map of the neighborhood. There's a bunch of ponds there. And so as soon as we touch that pond, there is a little pond next to this site at 45, and then there is another pond at 43, and that actually is really big and extends to 41. And so if we touch that, we'll have to go all the way down to the Long Island. So, and it just keeps going. So anyway, that was the professional opinion of the dredger, a professional dredger who looked at the site, and he said there is no need to do it.
Okay. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Any other members of the commission would like to speak?
Can you hear me? This is Michael.
Michael, yes, we can hear you.
Oh, great. Okay. I guess I figured this mic out. So just to jump back, Jacek, it seems that you alluded that there may be open zoning or building violations or issues.
Yes, correct. They were, and they are being addressed. Actually, the main one, which was a building code violation, which was a fireplace that was outdoor fireplace that was installed without a building permit. It has been actually removed. And any other issues that, again, I brought up the playscape, that has been addressed. And so we're addressing anything else. And those are the only items that I heard from the town. And I talked to Mike, who was out there, the building inspector, Mike Vitti, who was out there and looked at the fireplace. He said, I cannot sign off on that. It's too close to the house anyway. So we determined that it has to be removed, and as painful as it is to the owners, they did. So even without having any kind of approval, they actually removed the fireplace.
Jacek. So my question is, to your knowledge, are there any other standing violations or issues?
I don't know. I don't think so. I would have been notified probably by either building department, Pete, or from somebody from zoning if there was any other violation. And if there is, we would address it, of course.
I guess a question for the commission, just because this is the case study and the example that Jacek provided. Would the commission approve an application if there were standing zoning or building issues with the applicant?
Michael, can I just?
I'm sure we would make a resolution to have those cured.
Mike, I can clear this up. The building. Hold on, I'm next. The building.
Yeah, okay, sorry, we're using my speaker.
Yeah, the building violation has been resolved. There are no zoning violations. The subject of the application is to keep a section of terrace that's shown in gray, which, but that is not a zoning or building issue.
That's an EPC thing.
Correct. It's being requested to maintain it as part of this application. It was built, I think, when the fireplace was built, or in the same general time frame. So the answer is there are no building violations or zoning violations.
Does that answer your question, Michael?
Yes. My only other question is there an alternative to pass the utility and the sewage injector lines without going through the pond or the outlet at the northerly boundary?
There is no other way to get the sewage over there, nor the water over to from the east side to the west side. This commission has approved in the past crossing brooks and water channels like this before. The latest one that I rhyme the most current one would be over on Valley Forge. We had a force main going under the brook from that pond there out to the septic area in the back of the property there. So this is something that's not unusual, and all precautions are made as discussed with my detail on the plan and what Alex talked about. by damming up the water, pumping the water around during construction, and keeping the crossing dry during construction itself. So this is not something that this commission has not seen nor has not approved before.
Out of curiosity, is that for an accessory structure in a pool or for a dwelling?
That was for a single family residence. Again, it's sewage, is whether it's coming from a pool house or coming from a residence, it's the same, it would be the same.
I mean,
That's all
maybe
I
I'll
got.
jump in. I'm sorry. I was going to say that the pipe is pressurized and it's encast, so it's will not leak. It does not leak. I mean, there are pipes throughout the whole town, and that are pressurized. There's lots of not everything flows just downhill, so it's not, again, something unusual. It's pretty good construction.
Oh, I think there was actually, just jump in one last time. Maybe Jim had mentioned this, or Gunnar, is whether the pool house was planned to be constructed now, or if that's something for.
Okay, so let me explain that. So the idea here was that we would use this temporary crossing to do all heavy construction and build a pool, that the deck around it, bring in all the utilities so they can actually use the pool. For the slab, the pool house is a slab on grade construction, and there is another piece of slab behind it where the actual equipment is going to go. So we are going to basically install all of that. So all the heavy equipment that has to go, mainly it's the concrete truck that has to go across there. Once that's done, the plan is to actually stop at that point. The remainder of the pool house can be actually constructed the old-fashioned way with some muscles where people can carry 2x4s and 2x8s and 2x10s and whatever else we need across a footbridge. There is a footbridge. There currently, and it's been there for a long time, and they can just do it like that. Now, the reason that the owners don't like to do the full construction right now, actually multiple reasons, and they're all here, so they can tell you that too. Well, obviously, cost is one of them. This is an expensive project, and two, they may even decide to do something else. We would need a permit no matter what we will do. But having the footprint kind of locked in and having the patio and then the slab in there, that really takes care of the heavy construction. So it's not an open-ended construction. We're not trying to hide anything. We could have simply pulled a permit and taken 2 years to construct it, right? Because we have the right to do that. And so rather than doing that, we said we're going to do this and we're going to stop and then sort of evaluate the need for the pool house. And if we construct it, it's not going to be any heavy equipment that has to go in there. So we don't need to cross the brook again.
Any further questions, Michael?
No.
I'm sorry?
No.
No, okay, thanks, Mike. I saw your mic's off now, okay. Any other commission members would like to speak? Okay, I should go to Joe.
I think so, yeah.
Okay, Joe, floor is yours.
Okay, all right, thank you. Joe Canis, I'm a principal engineer with the firm Ty and Bond. We were retained by the commission to review the stormwater and sediment erosion control aspects of the application. So my involvement began with a site visit on September 2nd of 2020. And there was water in the pond at that time, just for reference. And subsequent to that, I issued my review letter that afternoon. My initial comments, they focused really on that crossing to make sure that it was sized properly. And I requested that Doug size that crossing in accordance with Connecticut DOT's temporary hydraulic guidelines, which he's done. The applicant's engineer responded to my comments, and I issued a letter on September 28th that basically that they've addressed all my comments. I had a couple minor comments outstanding. I think it was only one that was an add-on comment that I had regarding the crossing, adding a geotextile to the bottom of the channel. Just that way it serves as like almost like a visual reminder as to where those channel soils are, so they're not excavated further. The proposed crossing is something that we've done in the past. It's typical for a stream crossing, 2 culverts. I did request that Doug add an additional 2 feet of stone on top of the pipe, just to make sure that they do have the strength, so that the load as the construction vehicles pass over it is distributed to the ground below it instead of directly on the pipe. I saw a situation in Danbury once where there was an insufficient amount of cover over those pipes. There wasn't enough stone over it, and those pipes started to deflect, and they couldn't collapse. But 2 feet for this size of pipe is certainly sufficient. The DOT guidelines specify based on what's called the design risk, which is the procedure that you develop as part of the design of this, and for the time that this would be in service, a 2-year design storm is appropriate. And but as Mr. DeVesta said, it does pass the 50-year storm, so which is great. Also the utilities, that was something else we had a concern with. Those are encased in concrete, which again is a typical detail to prevent any sort of seepage. So that's in accordance with standard engineering practice. So that said, the applicant satisfied our comments on the stormwater and the erosion control.
Okay, hey, Joe, can I ask you a question on your point 6, page 3.6 of your letter?
Yeah.
You say stream crossings are also subject to the jurisdiction of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, et cetera. And the electric, can you, because what Doug DeVesta referred to at Valley Forge Road was essentially water, which is not electricity. Okay, putting a pipe underneath the stream and piping sewage, essentially piping black water up to a leaching field. Clearly the pool house is going to need electric. How does this electrical connection work? Because I was always understanding that you can't put electrical wires along the ground for obvious reasons.
Well, for the electric, what they could do is, well, they're going to need they're going to need the power, right, for the pool equipment.
Correct.
Right. So what they would, you could run the conduit in that same trench. It has to be about a foot away or so. There's no gas service, so you'll have to be 3 feet away. But I don't see any reason why you wouldn't be able to pull cable through there.
Okay, because I always thought that crossing a stream or something like that requires, Army Corps of Engineers approval. All the, you're familiar with the approvals that are necessary, and particularly because I always thought the electrical cable had to be overhead or underground, or deep underground.
No. It could be standard burial depth. Sometimes, if it's a fast-moving stream or if you have a large volume of water, scour might be concerned, like, would have a bridges, if the water comes ripping through there. But, that's not going to be the case here. And the concrete encasement would protect that. And the other issue is, typically when you're looking at scour, like, I don't know if you've heard about that landslide in Maine, there was a concern with the whole water supply for the city of Portland. Here, it's just one resident.
Thank you, Joe. Do you have anything else, Joe?
That's all I have. I'd be happy to answer any questions if any commissioners have questions.
Do any members of the commission have questions for Mr. Canis? Okay, then we'll open the hearing up to the public. And now, yes, you can, Mr. Maslin. Robert, do you want to?
Yeah, sure. My turn. Let me just make sure I got the right screen up here. Wrong one. Let's hold on 1 second. I have a PowerPoint, and I want to make sure you're on the right screen. Let's see. Okay. Can you see the PowerPoint that I have up?
No, we can't.
No. I think. Let me go down.
Hey, Fred, could you give Robert control?
Yeah, Fred's got to give me control. Okay. Here we go. How about now?
Yes, we can see it, Bob.
And it's the regular screen. It's not the. It's just got one screen on it, nothing else. I mean, one slide, right? It doesn't have all the management tools on it.
That's correct, Bob.
Okay, all right, thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Robert Maslin. I'm the attorney for the neighbors to the north. They abut the property. They're Robert and Karen Plunkett, who are here somewhere in this meeting. And as I said, they are at 51 Birch Road in Darien, and they their property abuts the area where this crossing is going to occur. I have several slides here that I'll run through, and I guess they want me to do most of the talking, so they're here if you have any questions that I can't answer. So we'll start with an overview of what I'm going to be talking about. First, I have a couple of videos. They're very short. They're only a few seconds of existing flooding conditions that occurred in 2018. By chance, one of the Plunkett's kind of went outside during the lull in the rain and actually videoed the storm conditions, particularly the flow through their front yard. And you'll see quite graphically what happens during major storms. There are several issues on violations. I know you talked about them before. I have a couple of specific ones on the slides that I'm going to talk about eventually. We have an issue with the open-ended application for the proposed pool house that I'll address along the way here. And what I'll wrap up with is an alternative. As you know, when you are dealing with significant disturbances and significant activities, one of the things the commission has to consider, and the applicant should also discuss and consider in terms of designing the plan, is alternatives. And I'll get into that when the time comes. So I put this slide up. This is from a 1997 variance application, but it's significant because that variance application involved this particular site. The property at 49 is right here. I have my little red dot pointer here. That's the pond. You'll see a couple of catch basins on both sides of Birch Road here. Matching catch basins in front of the Plunkett property, which back in '97 belonged to somebody named Howard. We have another matching pair farther up, and then you can see this stream continues upward, and there's looks like matching catch basins here that make their way into this stream here. So in addition to ordinary watershed, you have some direct street drainage that feeds right into this Tokenique Brook upstream, which may change the way the engineers look at how the floodwaters are handled or drainage is handled in major storms. The other thing here is I mentioned that several years ago, shortly after the Plunketts moved in, during the winter, they experienced flooding problems on their property when this catch basin here and possibly the other one became frozen, and they ended up with floodwaters on their front yard and ice and everything else. So the town ended up putting a berm here. I mention these things because they tend to illustrate with real examples what has been occurring over time. Now, on the slide here, I have to figure out how this thing is going to work now. This is a slide that has a video built into it. And I started it. It may seem jumpy, but if you download this PowerPoint presentation, you'll see it in a much smoother flow. This is really a 22-second video that shows the water flows, and I'll stop it right here. This is downstream into 49 Birch Road. There's a solid fence that's into the water flow. This little structure here is the existing bridge. You can see the water's right to the top of it, or the underside of it, I guess. And there's a railing up here, and then it continues to flow. This is significant because I'll show you the weather observation data 2 slides from now. But this has to do with the question of whether these culverts are going to be sufficient to handle stormwater if and when it happens while construction is underway. This is another video, same storm, April 16, 2018. And you'll see rushing water across the front of 51 Birch Road to Plunkett's property. As I said, if you download this video, which should be available probably tomorrow, I guess. You'll be able to see it in a much more of a smooth video. Now, this slide here is the record of climatological observations. It's basically NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. It's a record of the rainfall in April 2018. These 2 videos were taken on April 16th. The 24-hour observation showed a total of 0.91 inches. And that was the volume of water that was, and velocity of water that was running across the Plunkett's property toward 49. The next day, the 24-hour number was 2.45 inches, a much bigger storm. So if you look back and you think, well, mid-April 2018, that was a huge storm. Yeah, it was, but the video was taken after less than an inch of rain had fallen. And so I mention this because if you want to know what the actual flow is during a less than 1 inch storm, those videos actually show it. And it's pretty darn close to the overtopping that footbridge. And it tells me that it's really doubtful whether those 2 pipes are going to be able to handle the actual flow. I don't know what the engineering explanation is. It may have something to do with the fact that there's direct drainage coming from the street at several locations and being piped directly into Tokenique Brook. So that covers my evidence there. And I'll finish up this section with a couple of points here. The current application has something about the water flows. I don't think it's complete, given the video information. I've tried to read Doug's letter dated September 24, 2020. During his presentation, he mentioned a 24-hour, 2-year precipitation of 2.95 inches. I don't know about that. I mean, this is really, I would really suggest that they take another look at this. And hence the comment, the commission should require a more of a complete or competent study of the flows in Tokenique Brook. Now, off to the next section, existing violations. And I have a list of them here, and I'll show you them more graphically in a couple of slides as we move forward. The patio at the southern end of the property, that's not the one that was discussed during the applicant's presentation. This is the one at the south end of the property. That was enlarged, and a barbecue was maybe not as big as the fireplace on the off the other patio, but nonetheless a permanent barbecue was installed not only in the 100-foot upland review area, but also within the zoning setback. So that we think is a zoning violation, has not been either noticed or addressed. The patio and pergola were installed behind the garage, and that area appears to have been filled, and I'll show you why I think that in a minute. We already talked about the fire, the applicant talked about the fireplace, and I'm going to show you this in the next couple of slides. This is a site plan that was done in 2013 for an application to reconfigure the driveway in the front. That's why this whole driveway area is in dark gray. And what I've called out here is there's no terrace up here. There's a couple of significant trees. And the patio, which I'm going to show you on the next slide, was nowhere near as big as it is today. And let me just start with this close-up trees with no patio. And then when you look down here, this is a smaller patio than what's there. I'll show you what it looks like in the next two slides. So that's the starting point. And this is out of, oh, and by the way, that, just for the record, these two slides were from the 2013 application, EPC 35-2013, and that was for the driveway. This is the current application, and I have it enlarged, and I'll enlarge the enlargement a little farther. We now have flagstone patio pergola above, fireplace, we know that's been removed. This is why we believe this area where the flagstone patio is was filled in and the elevation or the contours raised up. There's a set of steps here, 1, 2, 3, or 4, depending on how you count them. And if you figure 10 inches or so, that's a pretty significant increase in the elevation. It looks like this is straight across here. There might be a step. Not sure. We haven't been on there to look at it. But this was done with no permits at all. And for some reason, Rich said that the owners asked permission to take the trees out. And he approved that administratively because they were not in good shape. But they didn't ask for permission and did not file an application for this. This is very close to the water course here. I don't see any anything here unless it's underground. I don't see anything for stormwater management, water treatment before it flows from the patio into the brook. If you go to the south, you can see this new barbecue is down here. This wouldn't be on the survey if it wasn't a substantial structure. Then you can see by looking at the outline, it's a larger outline. This was enlarged. Again, it's well within the upland review area. The upland review area ends on the other side of the house, close to the street. So where that leads us is you should require that the applicant submit an after the fact application with the supporting documentation that you'd usually see, stormwater management and treatment, because that wasn't in, and I haven't seen it in any of the application materials that we've seen for this current application. And not approve any new work until this previous work has been addressed. The open-ended pool house, as I understand the statute, there's a 5-year expiration on wetlands permits, but it also requires that work be done once it starts. It's to be done within a year. I've heard mention of 2 years. I know the commissions have some leeway. In this application, there should really be a commitment one way or the other. It's not, I don't think it's appropriate to say, well, we're just going to put a slab in, because the slab doesn't have any stormwater management. It's just got sheet flow off the side of it. There's no provision for dealing with that the way you would have it with an actual pool house with gutters and downspouts flowing into an underground system. So I just make the closing point on this section of the presentation. Leaving the pool house uncertain is not consistent with the statutes and regulations. Moreover, if the pool house is actually built at a later time, we don't know what changes they're going to want to make, and there'll be another redisturbance, possibly another stream crossing if it's a new application with a whole different plan that requires some additional groundwork or earthwork. And that's our section on the status of the pool house. Now, as you know, you've heard this many times, you consider alternatives. I didn't see anything in the application materials where the applicant has considered feasible and prudent alternatives. That would result in lesser disturbance. All it says is, due to pond, streams, and wetlands, most of the site is within the regulated area. There is not alternative location for the proposed swimming pool and pool house. Kind of begs the question, do you need to do this at all? But we know that you're willing to consider people's applications when they come in. But no build is always a consideration. Whether it's feasible and prudent depends on the circumstances. And I think somebody made a fair point earlier. A stream crossing similar to this that was approved for a single family dwelling and not a swimming pool and an accessory structure. But the other alternative is just reverse the location of the swimming pool and pool house. And I'll show you that here. This is what we have in mind. First of all, the way this is configured right now, the pool house is out off the south end of the pool. That means it's going to cast a shadow across part of the pool and part of the terrace. One of the benefits of reversing these two structures is you will have a smaller structure, meaning the pool house, a smaller footprint. Toward the north, you would have sufficient area for the pool to the south. Depending on how this is wiggled around a little bit, Doug might have to reconfigure this stormwater system here a bit, but it doesn't look like anything insurmountable or impossible. And what you wind up when you do this is a pool house that's going to be in the sun without casting a shadow on the pool or the terrace. But from an environmental standpoint, look what you wind up with here. Instead of running the conduits and the plumbing clear across the backyard to a structure back on the south end, you just run it straight up here. It cuts the distance down considerably. It reduces the amount of trench work that needs to be done. And it's a much more environmentally, I think, responsible way to do this. And you end up with a better plan. And that's an alternative that would like the applicant to consider and modify his plan accordingly and come back and see how that works out. And I'll just want to mention one other thing that occurred to me while we were talking about this, while I was listening. I want to go back to the, okay. Oops. Okay. Has any consideration been given to running the access and the plumbing and everything up along the southerly boundary? Your crossings are here. They can be controlled. The access would not have to run across this part of the stream here. Rather, it could be done either over these two spillways or in some way that would coincide with that. I don't know physically what it looks like or whether it's feasible. It may not be, but if it's worth considering, it ought to be considered. Here are the benefits. The existing location of the house, pool house, as I mentioned, will cast a shadow. The conduits require trenching across the entire backyard. And here are the two benefits of the alternative location. No shadow, and it reduces the distance that the conduits and the plumbing have to travel underground across an upland review area in the backyard. And this will also fit within the zoning setback lines. What I did in my diagram here was these red boxes, I used, I guess it was Adobe, to outline the footprint up here of the pool house. And this bottom one has two rectangles connected by a little diagonal here. The inner box is the pool surface itself, which has to comply with setbacks, and the outer portion is the terrace around the pool. And you can see there's plenty of space for that. The differences would involve depending on how you settle this in, you just have to move this retaining wall back. This hasn't been built yet. Adjust the regrading here. You still have all your hay bales here. You're a little bit closer to the wetlands here, but you're eliminating so much more disturbance by rerouting the underground utility connections. This setback, this could actually go farther south. The setback line runs along, let me get my little laser pointer here. Setback line runs along here and then here. And you can see there's plenty of room over here to fit the pool. So that's what I have regarding the alternatives. And if you just bear with me for a moment, I'll go through my notes here that I wrote while the applicant was speaking and going over the project. One thing that I would want to point out, and I don't know what the zoning answer is to this, but regrading has to be at least 15 feet away from a property boundary. The grading down along this drainage facility here doesn't look like it's 15 feet away. And you're doing, to the extent grading is going to occur up by the crossing, that doesn't look like it's 15 feet away from the property boundary. I mentioned that it might be a little enough grading that it's exempt, but it seems pretty close, and zoning should take a look at it. A question came up about dredging. My understanding of dredging a pond relative to stormwater storage is that dredging a pond does not necessarily create additional storage capacity. And the reason is water seeks its own level. And whatever the freeboard is, that's your storage capacity. And whether it's dredged or not dredged, if the level is the same, the storage capacity above the water level will remain the same. So dredging doesn't automatically give you more or less flood water storage capacity or drainage water storage capacity. Dredging. In 1981 and in 2005, if you go back through the EPC files, you'll find not one but two dredging applications for this property, this pond. EPC 8-1981 was a dredging application, and EPC 75-2005 was another dredging application. And I would note that the one from 2005 was done by Mr. Windells, who had filed numerous pond dredging applications all up and down, I know for sure, the Goodwives River, and ponds up and down other water courses in Darien. So yes, it appears that this pond has been dredged twice. It's possible. I don't know who the dredging contractor was that didn't want to touch this, but it just seems to me that if it's been done twice already, I don't know why there wouldn't be a benefit to dredging it another time if it would avoid having this pond just silt up and end up being a mucky wetland mess. I wanted to straighten out the record on that and suggest that it's potentially a viable thing to do. And it seems that there's a period of time between these, 24 years between the two applications that I know of, and we are another 15 years, so sometime in the next few years it might be a good time to dredge this again. That is, let's go down the rest of this. All I have, I've made the points we wanted to make, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to address them, or if you have any questions of the Plunketts, they're here to answer as well.
Thanks, Bob. I'd like to open up to the members of the commission. Do you have any questions for Attorney Maslin?
I do. Bob, this is Jim Millard.
Yes.
I find your presentation thought-provoking. Do we know, and maybe this is more for Rich Jacobson, do we know that the two dredging applications, I believe from 1981 and 2005, were actually acted upon, or were they just applications? Was there a permit and work done that followed on? Do we know?
I don't know for certain, but Mr. Windells was dredging at the time. I wasn't here, but I'd just like to point out that the applicants, we don't require people to dredge their ponds. Right. This pond, I think, might be in need of dredging at some point, and there are methods that are less of, they take out less silt, but they do work, like a hydraulic dredge, but we're not requiring it. And we use less, the town doesn't use road sand anymore. So it may be a number of years before the applicant feels it's unsightly, and Bob is right that it has nothing to do with storage capacity. I mean, a pond that's full of sand has the same storage capacity as a pond that's already full of water when a storm comes.
I heard Bob mention that, and it certainly struck me. And I think Alexandra made the point earlier that there's no tremendous benefit to whether you dredge it today or not. So I'm not focused on that. I find the attorney's recommendations and shifting the pool with the pool house. I think the permit question, Bob, is 2 years, but Rich will clarify that for all of us.
Typically,
go right ahead.
You give 5-year permits, but
Right.
You can put a limit on the amount of time once they start construction, but this would be not like a new house where it would take a year or more. But my comment on the slab is, I agree with Jacek that if you put the slab in and at the present time or at the same time, you can remove the temporary crossing, restore the stream, and not have to go reapply in the future for another stream crossing, which at that point you might deny.
But yeah, but at that point you have a very unsightly concrete slab that's 20 by 20 or 30 by 30.
True, but
and just sort of hanging out in the yard.
True, but a wetland commission, I don't think is going to care if it's unsightly. I'm trying to avoid a second crossing.
No, okay, I
So
agree.
you could require that they either, I mean, if they choose not to build the slab and restore the stream, which is what they would be required to do, I wouldn't want to see them come back and do the crossing again for a slab for a pool house necessarily, or they would have to start the whole process again, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
I thought that Jasek's view of that, Eric, to your point, was well taken. As Rich advises, I can understand a homeowner wanting to spread the costs of a major improvement like this over various time. Maybe they're deciding on different architectural styles for their pool house. So I personally am not too troubled by that. They're the ones that are going to have to look at the slab while they decide when and what to build.
If I could just make a couple of comments along those lines. I understand what you're saying and what everyone's saying about, taking care of the environmental part of this by putting the slab in and putting all the underground utilities in. But what happens when an owner, whether it's these owners or somebody else, comes along and says, I want a different house that's going to require more of a slab or a different slab, or it's maybe in a little different location. And we're back to another wetland crossing in order to do that. And it in a way, it almost invites, by leaving it open, a change in the plan. And I understand the part about wanting to budget ahead and making sure you get your approval in so you don't have to come back. But it just doesn't seem to make sense that you would go through all of this and then just have a slab sitting there without any stormwater management related to the staff or slab, and uncertainty as to whether it's ever going to be built. You'd have, I don't know what they would do about the conduit ends, whether they'd be sticking out of the ground or sticking up through the slab. There are some other considerations as well. I mean, they're technical. I understand, but I know the commission has some leeway on timing of these things. You can't go more than 5 years under the statute. Unless they change the statute, it was 1 year from the beginning to end of the work. My thoughts. That's. I see yes. Right. Raise his hand.
Yeah, I was raising my hand, just waiting to be allowed to respond to Bob's comments, if I may. Unless there's something else you would like to talk before that. No. Okay. So in that case, first of all, yes, thank you, Bob. That was actually very useful. And I think the main point about your presentation is about the drainage, actually the lack of drainage in the area. And what you showed in that slide is how storm drains, which are actually on the road, connect directly into this stream. And they're the ones that actually add all that flooding that you saw upstream, not our construction or not our activities. What we are going to do is going to have zero impact on that video, that very nice video, dramatic, but if we consider this and we say, all right, we're going to take one of your alternatives, do nothing, how is that going to change anything? That stream is going to be overflowing just the way it's been overflowing for the last 20 years. And again, part of that is a problem with the town not having a comprehensive plan. You know how to address this? Very easy. You dig out birch and you put a big drain, storm drain, under the road, and you connect all the storm drains into it. And then you pump everything directly out into the Long Island, not through the stream. The stream is supposed to only take water from lawns and the properties, not from the road. And that is the problem. And I think, again, what else can we do? Yeah, there is melting of all these, snow. And what are we going to do about that? We have, and I see it too, we have crazy weather where we get droughts, like we had one, but all of a sudden we get 2.5 inches of water. Again, how is our activity going to contribute to that? I don't think it does. I think what we're doing has really nothing to do with that. Again, the problem is upstream, and the problem is lack of planning, long-term planning. And again, that's something that I don't think would be really appropriate to ask our client to fix all the problems in drainage and area. There's no way we can do that. So, again, this is a larger picture, and I understand where everybody's coming from. We see all this flooding, and everybody's freaking out. And again, what can we do? Well, maybe stop using cars and pollute less. I don't know, but it's a totally different, I think, discussion, a different subject. Now, as far as the alternative plan, I actually thought about that plan too, and thank you for bringing that up. And the reason I said that it's not a good plan is because, A, it has the pool, which is the deeper end of excavation, very, very close to the pond and very close to the wetlands. You're also coming much closer to the buffer, having the pool on the other side. And the other reason that I didn't think that this was a good alternative was actually thinking about the neighbors, the Plunketts. The pool house itself, behind the pool house, you actually have equipment. And so having the pool house on the other side and having the equipment behind the pool house would actually screen the Plunketts from the noise of the compressors. But if they prefer to have the pool closer, the pool house closer to that and have the, the pumps and everything in there closer to their property, we would consider it. I would have to talk to my client and see what they think about it. But in terms of bringing in the pipes, it's pretty much the same area. It's the same area that's being disturbed. And again, bringing the pool further down and closer to the wetlands, I think that has a bigger impact on the wetlands. So, this is why, I thought hard and long about this. Yes, do nothing is always an option, but I don't think we would be here if we actually consider that option, right? Simply there wouldn't be any application. So again, I don't think that what we're doing is going to be detrimental to the flooding in Darien. We are not going to contribute any more runoff, and you have engineers that actually prove that, than what you have there now. Think about this. Right now you have a lawn that's dry, like a bone, right? You get 2.5 inches of water. What do you think is going to happen to that water? It's going to go down into the stream, into the pond, and down into Long Island. Now, if we were to build our project, what is going to change? We're going to catch some of that water through our detention system and then introduce it into the ground, which I think is actually good. That is going to allow at least some of that water to be retained and slow down so it doesn't overwhelm the brook. But I cannot change the amount of water that comes down. The rain, there's nothing we can do about that. So, and again, I think we thought about this for a long time. I think what we're proposing is not something that's totally crazy. There are other pools in the neighborhood. There is a pool at 1 Woods End, 10 Woods End, and 45, which is a neighbor, right next, on the southern side, and 53 Birch. Well, it's a pretty big project there. So it's not like we're asking for something unusual. There are other projects like that. I think all of this has been proven by at least 3 engineers that is actually viable. We have Joe, we have Doug, and we have Darren looking over our shoulder too. And so I think really the question here is this something that the commission thinks that could be done? And, you know, and again, we're open for suggestions. If there's anything that we can change or address or make it better. If the neighbors like to flip the pool house and the swimming pool, we would consider that. I don't think it's a good idea, but we'll listen. And so, you know, I just hope that this could be approved the way we are presenting it. And I think, again, it's a project that is not, you know, not totally crazy. Thank you very much.
Would any members of the commission like to speak? Well, hey, Jacek, since you're the lead presenter for the applicant. Yes, sir. Yes, Robert. Go ahead.
Just take 2 seconds to respond to Jacek. Just a couple seconds. He misses the point with this crossing and the pipes. Our point is, it looks like the analysis that Doug did and that Joe Canis looked at doesn't match up with what actually happens in a storm event where there's less than 1 inch of water. And that has to do with the capacity of the pipes and backup, which we know is going to happen, and it's going to exacerbate it if the pipes aren't sufficient to handle that water. We didn't make any comments about whether or not the stormwater management is sufficient on a long-term basis after the project is finished. And just finally, reconfiguring this, I wouldn't have proposed it if my clients weren't on board with it. And we're talking a couple of feet one way or the other with a dramatic reduction in the underground trenching location of the underground utilities. I just wanted to respond to those points. Go ahead.
Doug?
Yeah, I'd like to discuss just a little more about this this drainage issue that Bob's bringing up. Joe and I discussed this at length, and he pointed me to a very interesting website, StreamStat Reports. It actually shows the drainage area for this project. The drainage area is about 0.12 square miles. It goes all the way up to Three Wells Lane. This takes up Sullivan, Molly Lane, Ridge Acres Road, and comes down. So it's got a fairly large watershed in it. And the analysis that we did on it, we proved based on the numbers, again, from that watershed there, and this analysis, let me just get those numbers out here. With a 2-year storm, it has 2.9 CFS, cubic feet per second, flow to it. And the rainstorm that Bob's showing is the 2-inch rainstorm. So it looks like we've got enough capacity there. And we demonstrated through the hydraulic calculations that was attached and looked at by Joe that we've got capacity in the 2 pipes to handle almost 25 CFS, cubic feet per second, going through there. So again, I feel comfortable with the design we've come up with to show that we've got the capacity in our crossing. Again, it's only a temporary crossing. So again, this is temporary, a few months, whatever it takes to get this pool in, get everything squared away, and then that crossing comes out. So again, the calculations, we designed it based on good standard practice of engineering, and was reviewed by the town's peer review. So we feel comfortable that the flows can handle that. The pipes that we're proposing can handle the flows going through there.
My question is for Joe Canis. Joe, when you do this analysis, you take the drainage area, whatever it was, square miles. But I think one of Attorney Maslin's points was that in addition to the normal drainage that comes down from Three Wells Lane through Molly Lane, Ridge Acres, etc., you have a bunch of storm drains that empty into it. Okay, and that clearly adds to the peak level of whatever storm or whatever calculation you're there. So I guess my question is, obviously that affects your calculations at that point, doesn't it?
That's correct. If you have urbanized drainage, curb gutters, that sort of thing, that would increase the amount of runoff entering the system. The application that Doug used doesn't account for that. The other thing I do want to point out is, I unfortunately don't have the hourly record for Darien. I looked them up for Westchester Airport, which is the closest location I could find. And there might be a couple things that are going on that are influencing the rate of flow in that video. One of the things is the moisture conditions of the soil. It appears it was fairly wet before that storm. So if the soil is wetter, it's going to have less capacity than you would in typical conditions, so you're going to get more runoff. That could be influencing it. And the other thing I'm also taking a look here is another possibility could be that the temperatures in April 2018 were fairly low, so the ground kind of fully thawed out yet. That could also be influencing the amount of runoff here. Typically, when we do these analysis, we assume an average moisture condition. That's pretty much industry standard. You assume like the middle. So that's one of the things that's impacting this also. So time of year is going to be important. I don't know what time of year the applicant is planning on doing this. Obviously, the sooner the better. So that's also one of the things that could be influencing the flow in that video. Based on the calculations that Doug presented, he did follow standard DOT procedure for sizing that culvert crossing, and under most circumstances it would work. Could there be a freak storm event like that one in April where that piping system could be overtopped? Absolutely. I think the remedy for that, it would be for somebody to go out there and take those sandbags off of it so that stone could wash over.
Well, just out of curiosity, I remember, the volume, the capacity is pi r squared. You're using 218 inches. What happens if you increase those to 24 inches? Because that would dramatically increase the throughput at that point in time.
Right. Well, that you could. I think the problem with the 224s is that you would start excavating the channel bank. Right. The 218s fit in that channel now. Once you get up to the 224s, you have to increase the capacity, but then you're starting to dig into those channel banks. But the opposite side of that coin is, well, those banks are disturbed because there's an existing bridge there. But the other thing too, your crossing gets 6 inches higher, so you have a longer ramp length on either side. So that's more temporary fill you're putting in the wetlands in the upland review area.
All right. Anybody else have any questions on this topic?
Well, just one more comment about that. That video that was shown, that dramatic video of the water rushing in, that was taken from the adjacent property looking down on our property. And that is not going to change by any means. In other words, whether we do this project or not, that same amount of water is going to show up there one day. And I think if you really want to address that, is you don't address that by having my clients dredge the pond, but by having Darien, DPW, I don't know, whoever, to come up with a comprehensive plan for drainage. Because I think that clearly shows that the drainage is inadequate. And then so I don't know what make that all the way up north. I don't know.
Hey, I think Robert's point, I think the point is that right now there are no pipes. Okay, and so when this torrent of rain comes down, this torrent of water comes down, it flows right there, and it flows through as the picture of flooding presented itself. Okay, and that's going to occur. That occurred in fact. Okay. I think Attorney Maslin's question is if we put pipes in there and tunnel it for a certain period of time, is that going to restrict the flow and back up that water onto his client's property? Is that fair, Bob?
Yeah, and I would just also note that those videos are not the 2-inch storm. That's less than an inch. That's why I put that NOAA chart in showing the rainfall for the day of the video. It's 0.91 inches. That's not even the 2-inch storm. But yes, you're correct. What they're doing is creating a pinch point.
This is why it will make a lot of sense to do this project as quickly as possible. We don't want to take the 2 years to construct it. We want to have that crossing in literally 2-3 weeks so we can get the concrete in there and get it done. And then we pull out. If we do construction the way you're kind of asking us to do, we can take about 2 years to build it with extension. This is building permit. I'm not talking about EPC. Once I have a building permit, I have 2 years to finish construction. And we don't want to do that. We want to get this done and over with as quickly as possible. This was one of the thinking, early on, how to do this quickly so we don't do the minimum amount of disturbance. So again, I think it would make sense to do this quickly. Just put the stuff that we need to put in, the heavy concrete, and then we pull out. And if you are concerned about somebody else coming in 10 years from now, they would have to come to this commission. So any kind of an application in the future would have to be considered from scratch.
All right. And listen, I'd like to change the topic here slightly. Attorney Maslin also pointed out a couple of what would appear to be violations on the north patio and the southern patio there. I believe it was on his slide that to do an after the fact, an after the fact. An after the fact application to EPC. I mean, you could modify this application and submit it so that because you're asking for a regrading right by the stream, etc. But Doug, what do you think about that?
We sort of look at that. Bob brought up questions regarding was water, the drainage and things like that. We have to look at it. I'm certainly we can find a way to handle the runoff from that patio in the north and the patio to the south there, and water quality. So I don't see that being an issue to add this to this permit or do an after the fact permit.
No, because I think what we should do is add it to this permit just in terms of expediency. Okay, and to cure those and go through that. No, Rich, in order to get it done.
Yeah.
Okay. So that would be.
It's a minor water quality issue.
Yeah. Well, but it has to do with the runoff, all that sort of the curing of the so that is that's the specialty. So let him think about that, and then you can amend your application to cure that, and then you apply for it all at once, right? Rich, does that make sense?
Yeah. To me, this is the patio is part of this application already, but if you want a water quality,
yes, let's go through this. Because it's right on top, because that patio is right on top of the right on top of the stream, and
there is still a buffer.
There is a buffer there. I agree, but I think just to make things correct.
I'm sorry, this is Michael. I'm trying to wrap my head around this. So there's it appears that there's impervious surface that was constructed abutting the house on the westerly bank of the pond, and the existing engineering included that impervious surface, correct?
Say that again, Michael. The
engineering that Doug conducted, the stormwater analysis, included the impervious surface. on the westerly bank of the pond. The two patios that were built without a permit.
Yeah,
That
they're
was-
on the eastern side of it. They're on the eastern side.
Eastern
Oh,
side.
I apologize. Right, the eastern side.
No, they were not, Michael. We analyzed the drainage for the pool house and the pool patio area. We did not analyze the patios on the east side of the brook.
So, Mr. Chairman, are you proposing that the stormwater management be updated to incorporate the patios? Because the patios weren't built with zoning approval?
Well, okay, absolutely. I think we can add those to the calculations. And, you know, the one patio was actually there. It was enlarged. So we can calculate the enlarged, or we'll calculate for both. I mean, that can certainly calculate for all of that. I think what Rich was suggesting is that we do this as a separate application, but if you like to do it all at once, that's fine with us. So anyway, we can provide those calculations.
Chairman? Eric?
Sorry, I was muted and I was speaking to myself as usual. I apologize for that. Now, Rich was just suggesting that it was his recommendation.
Yeah, it's a minor amount of surface area.
So, but let's get it done. Let's get it done to get it to,
Why not?
yeah. And so we can go forth with that. All right. Is there anybody else from the public that would like to speak? Yeah, so what we'll do now is we'll continue the public hearing. Next one is November 4. I think it's November 4. So we'll continue the hearing till November 4. Jacek and Doug, you have some homework to do. And we'll hear from you then. Okay? Is that fair? All right.
Yes.
Eric?
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes.
Eric,
Thank you.
Tim Millard, may I ask a question while we have everybody assembled and while the public hearing is still open?
Please.
Was there, using the word alternatives, Doug and Jacek, for the planning, the construction logistics of the pool and pool house, could you access and stage all your equipment on the south side of this house and avoid the whole conversation of crossing this Tokenique Brook?
Well, we would be still crossing, but only on the south side. And I think we looked at that area. It looks like, again, it was built up. There's some stone walls. There's some soil that I think was filled in there to create those spillways. I think that would be a longer crossing and it will require more construction. We're trying to stabilize the soil on both ends. I'll have Doug talk about it, but you know, we looked into that, and I think it's our opinion. It's better to put the crossing on the other side because it's also at the end of the driveway. There's a garage there on that end, and there's a driveway that comes right head in. So all you would have to do is just extend it kind of out, take the fence there out, go across. And again, do it as quickly as possible within a couple of weeks and be done.
I'd like to bring up that point too, Jim, is that, Fred, can I have the screen?
One moment, Doug.
Thank you. Okay, so what you're thinking, what Bob is saying and what Jim is saying, they want us to come down along this side of the pond and access the area. Couple of things here. There's not shown here. I think there's a lot of vegetation here, but also they got a 30-inch oak right here. So that and the distance between that tree and the pond itself is not much. I can tell you in a second. You've got approximately,
I see it on the plan. I
yeah,
just
you've
wondered.
got maybe 15 feet to the edge of the stone wall right here along the edge of the pond there. And bringing any heavy equipment across that can compromise that drainage there.
Yep.
Crossing the spillways here, you probably can plate those things, but then you get up this area in here. It does drop down and it goes back up again, so it would be kind of an awkward transition. But the main thing is getting the area between this 30-inch oak and the edge of the pond there would be difficult. And coming this way, like Jacek said, you come right up the road to the driveway, across the narrowest point of our brook, and then into the back.
I have no doubt of you guys' capabilities and your care in looking at every angle. I was just asking.
Sure.
What now sounds like a dumb question.
Anybody else on this topic before we move on? All right, let's move on to other business. Discussion of stormwater management system. I requested this to be added to the agenda. What I'm going to do is postpone it for November 4th meeting. The minutes of September 2 were attached. Do all the members of the commission have that?
I did get Jim's comments.
Okay, you got Jim's comments. Anybody else? Kelly, did you do your normal due diligence on this? Because I know
I did, but I didn't send them to Rich yet, but I can, but I have every confidence that Jim has already caught all of them.
Well, if you could send them to Rich, I'd appreciate it. So, Jim, may I have a motion to approve the minutes of September 2?
Yes, I'm happy to make a motion to approve our minutes from the September 2 meeting as revised.
Great. Susan, can I have a second, please?
I second the motion.
Great. Without objection, then we'll approve these minutes. And then there's no other business. So I'd like a motion to adjourn this meeting, Mr. Millard.
I would like to propose we adjourn tonight's meeting of the Environmental Protection Commission.
Great. Susan, a second, please.
I second the motion.
Great, thank you. And, I need a vote on that, but I'm sure it's unanimous. So without objection, I will consider the vote unanimous. And good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.